is exceptionally pertinent for designers and how we're designing in the metaverse going forward. So he's combining healthcare and metaverse. I personally am super excited about this. So, Guillaume, I'm going to leave it up to you, and I'll mute myself. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Theo. And I must say, you pronounce perfectly my name. So I really appreciate that. I know it's not easy to pronounce French names. So yeah, thank you for that. Well, I'm super happy to be here, super excited to be part of this conference. There has been a lot of interesting talks this morning and yesterday. So yeah, super stoked. Today I'm going to discuss, we're going to explore a little bit together how the metaverse can be built and why design is actually one of the key to really rock it in this new virtual world. I prepared a small agenda. So over the 30 minutes, 40 minutes together, we will explore, first of all, what is a metaverse, because there are plenty of definitions out there. So we're going to really put our own definition for the length of this talk, and then understand why it's actually important for the healthcare industry. Then we will tackle what will be the role of creators, of entrepreneurs or pioneers in this new virtual world. Then I will give you some hints on how to be metaverse ready. And last but not least, we'll have to look a bit at the potential risk and pitfalls for people looking at undertaking something in the metaverse. But before getting started, a short presentation. You may have noticed it. I am French, so I apologize if I have a bit some of an accent. My name is Guillaume. I'm not actually from the healthcare industry. I'm a humble designer. A lot of people from my family are actually in the healthcare, pharmacy, or pharma industry. Myself, I just can design pretty screens. So yet I had the chance with my agency to tackle some really interesting projects in the healthcare industry. So I gathered some know-how over the last few years. And what we do basically at ENNO Studio, without doing too much advertising, we build interface between the man and the machine. So we create user experience, a user interface for big companies such as insurance, healthcare, bank, airlines, and we translate the user needs into digital products. So if I have to put it blunt and simply, that's what we do. But the funny thing is that 10 years ago, back when I was studies here in Berlin, I founded my first company, which was a game studio called Illusion. And what we were doing back in the days was using geolocation. So we were actually using the data from Google or Apple Maps in order to build on top of this layer. So the whole idea was to, a bit like Monopoly, to build properties in our real world. And thanks to augmented reality, you could visualize this new world through the camera, through the lens of your iPhone or your smartphone. So back in the days, we already speaking about social interaction, because it has a bit this Farmville factor when you had to interact with other players. We're also already talking about virtual worlds, augmented and virtual reality. So all these worlds actually not new, right? You may even recall the whole hype behind Farmville, I think 15 or 20 years ago. Then you also had like Warcraft. So building virtual worlds is not something that appeared like the last 2 or 3 years. So why are we now talking so much about the metaverse if virtual worlds are already out there for at least 10 or 15 years? Well, that's why I believe it's important that we agree on the same definition for this talk. Pokemon, yeah, sorry, I have the chat open. Pokemon Go, yeah, I mean, that was something, right? I believe that was, one of the first metaverse as we have it today. But let's come back to that later. So yeah, my definition and the one that we use by working at ENNO Studio is that in comparison to the world as we have it today, the metaverse is a much more immersive and much more social experience. So it's all about comparing what we have today, which is the Web 2.0, to the metaverse. It's much more, again, I'm going to repeat because it's a message for my presentation, much more immersive and social experience. The Web 2.0 is a social web. I'm not sure if you are aware of that, but it's a rise and fall of social networks. It's all about interacting with each other. It's all about user-generated content. While the Web 1 or the first web was purely informative, right? You would open a website, get some content, and that's pretty much it. So you take the Web 2.0 and then you add some technology on top of that, such as the mixed reality. So you have virtual augmented reality. You have the decentralized web, which is allowed thanks to the blockchain technology. And then really important, you have high-speed internet, because one of the main difference between now and 10 years ago is now we can render stuff on demand. You can watch a high-definition movie in a subway. You can get much more on your smartphone that you could have had 5 years ago. So the idea of creating a more social and immersive world is possible thanks to this convergence of technologies. So that's why metaverse doesn't have like one simple definition. It's actually an upgrade of what we currently have, thanks to certain technologies. So I hope it's clear for you. If you do not agree with this definition, I would happily take your question at the end of this talk. So now, if that's a question I get a lot, especially from my parents, when they ask me, okay, what does the metaverse look like? Well, one of my first answers is that there won't be, or there is no one single metaverse. There will be many metaverses, the same way as we don't have one internet, we have millions of internet websites. So you are going to have metaverse for several purposes, for fun, for social networking, for work. You will have some combination of metaverses, but you won't have, I mean, hopefully not one single version of the metaverse. And to illustrate a bit, you know, this concept of social and immersive web, I like to take this vintage movie from YouTube. It was shot back in 2016, so in the internet age is almost a century. It was shot by a Japanese director called Keiichi Matsuda. It's called Hyper Reality, and I invite you to look at it because it's quite a short and funny movie. And what is quite interesting is that, first of all, it really emphasizes immersive and social experience, because you can interact with other people, you can rate your bus ride, but also because it already show and display that the metaverse is going to englobe and impact all industries of our world. So not only entertainment, but also like buying in a supermarket, having a financial transaction, sending the package by post. So that's what is quite interesting, is that it's a bit creepy, it's a bit overwhelming, I know, but at least it's really shows it's going not only going to impact one small sphere, but it's actually going to really touch all industries out there. I will send you the movie after. You can already Google Hyper Reality on YouTube, and you will find it for free. So if you've been already a bit in the field of the metaverse, one can't fail to notice that the metaverse is heavily impacted or influenced by gaming, which is normal because video games were the first one to look for disconnecting the user from the reality. It's all about creating fantasy, telling stories, and then have a fully immersive experience. So that's quite normal that the biggest advanced in this field were made by gaming. So if you look at Fortnite by Epic, Roblox, Sandbox, even Meta, you know, what they've started to display from Facebook was really a gamified approach, like an entertaining approach. So, right now the metaverse is truly dominated by fun and by gaming. I fully agree. Yet you have to understand that the metaverse is going to impact every industries of the world, starting with education, real estate, but also healthcare, manufacturing, military. It's really going to have a broad impact. And I personally, I do believe that the metaverse is going to impact the way we utilize internet, the same way smartphone change, our daily online usage. So I believe that in the smartphone, when one of the latest small revolution of the online world, in the tech world, I do think metaverse will be the next one. And there are some figures to back it up. There is a famous study from Citi that was displayed beginning of the year, when they speak of an industry between 8 and 13 trillion economy by 2030, and we're also discussing, and they also speak about 5 billion users in the metaverse. So I mean, obviously those are forecasts, crazy projections. It already gives you a bit of feeling of where the journey goes. So now, if any of you wants to start venturing in this world, the question is what can be done and how can we work with this new world? Well, first of all, any pioneers among you who want to start something in the metaverse, there's something you have to understand, is that the main goal is to create and design an overlay on top of our physical world. So it's not creating a world which is fully detached from our reality. It's really something that is on top, or at least mixed with our current world. So that's really important, because it's not a video game. It's not a virtual world disconnecting from our daily life. It's really something which is connected to our physical world. And this is possible thanks to meaningful connection. I'm going to speak a lot about connection interaction, because that's the key between what happened in the past and what's going to happen in the next few years. So you already may have seen that Fortnite, the game provider, organized a concert with Ariana Grande, which gathered millions of users in Fortnite, so in a virtual world. So there's already a connection between our physical world and the analog world, in the online world. But the other things start to happen now as well. People that meet in a virtual space, or like brands or like design that I've created in a metaverse, start to actually be translated in our physical world. So it's for now, it's mostly happened for the fashion industry, but you already start to see there is a real connection between the metaverse and our real world. And the question is, how is it possible? Well, I have two answers. The first one is spatial, and the other one is interaction. Spatial, because we are going to deal much more with 3D environments. If you play around with augmented reality, virtual reality, even 3D renders on a browser, it's all about spatial design. I can't say it, but I think you get the idea. It's all about leaving this bi-dimensional screen and moving into a 3D environment. It sounds like obvious, but when you start to think about new ideas for the metaverse, you have to keep in mind that you are not having a screen or a piece of paper. You can actually utilize the whole environment. That's why I'm going to insist a lot on that. And that's actually true even for the simplest application. So a simple light switch, to control the light at home, can already make use of these 3D environments, but also much more complex therapeutic world. I invite you to have a look at Floreo, who actually coming with virtual reality therapy to deal with kids with autism and ADHD. So it's super interesting. And what I wanted to illustrate, even for this complex world, here again, you have to deal with a spatial design, with a space which is surrounding around you and not solely on a flat screen, so to say. And what I found super interesting is actually how to use the spatial design and immersive experience to enhance social interaction. I have one of my favorite use case is during the COVID. I think you've seen that so many people started to do a sport at home, right? So some of them just decided to do a few burpees on the floor, but the most advanced started to order indoor sport equipment, such as this bike, in order to regularly meet in this virtual world and cycle together. And what is super interesting with this sport equipment is not only you met online for social interaction, like basic friendship or like social interactions, but you could also take fully advantage of the almost physical presence of your colleagues and your friends. If any of you have been cycling in your life, you may have noticed that when you are behind someone, behind another cyclist or behind a moving option, you benefit from what we call the wind drag. So you are going to move faster if you are behind a truck. Well, I would not recommend to be behind a truck, but behind at least another cyclist, right? So they actually managed to replicate that in this metaverse, so that by meeting other friends, not only you actually had the social interaction, but you also could benefit from the embodiments, like actually being faster by staying together and sticking together. So that's for me a true metaverse experience, when it's not only exchanging email or just having a nice interaction. Is you actually like dive in all in into the experience, and I think that's pretty much the metaverse. Okay, so that was a nice introduction, but you will ask me like, what does it mean for us in the healthcare industry, right? Well, the good news, I think that the metaverse is not going to be like any other technologic as a tech trends that we had over the last few years. It's not going to be like the crypto trend or like to be the blockchain trend. Is going to be welcomed with quite positively in the healthcare industry. So there's many studies out there, but this one from Accenture points out that 80% of healthcare executives actually see the metaverse on a positive side, and they see it as an opportunity. So it's actually quite a good news, because historically the healthcare industry was not the fastest to deploy tech innovation. I mean, obviously for certain contexts, definitely, but I mean for the general public or for the, I mean, just look how long it actually took to actually have an online visit with your doctor, with your GP. We had to wait until the pandemic to democratize this kind of things. While in all the industries of the world, we are using Zoom call for like telehealth. Yeah, I mean, that's something that was really moved because of the pandemic. So I mean, that's something that could have already happened 50 years ago, right? So the healthcare historically is not the industry that, I mean, not always move the fastest. And here I do think that there's a real enthusiasm from the healthcare professional, and I do think they will be jumping on this trend. And the good news is there's actually some opportunity, because the market is going to move from 6 billion to 72 billion in 2030 for the healthcare metaverse market. So there is a potential, there is a motivation. So I do think it's something that we should be looking seriously. And the reason is there are some concrete opportunity for us in the healthcare industry. I will name you only three. There are hundreds of opportunities, but those are my three favorites. First of all, for health delivery, nowadays it's already possible to use augmented reality, virtual reality, and minimal invasive surgery to pursue operation. It's already out there. But what I do believe is that the metaverse will help democratize this kind of practice and make it available for all kind of fields, such as psychological therapy. It's already started to be used to treat PTSD, for instance, or burnout patients in this kind of closed environments, in order to really like cut from the reality. It's going to also help doctor-patient interaction. First of all, you can explain the operation, you can rehearse, but afterward you can display how the operation actually went through a virtual room, displaying what just happened. So here, I really see to augment health practice as we know. I see a big potential, and it's already something that start to happen. Augmetics, which is an Israel-based company, work a lot in the US to conduct surgery. So you have the possibility to have augmented reality surgery, but also virtual rooms in order to exchange, to practice, and also to interact with other people. So we already speak here of a metaverse experience for surgeries. I do believe that the education and the training are going to be revolutionized by metaverse, because technology, especially in the healthcare industry, is expensive. The cost of infrastructure, the access to infrastructure. You know, I learned recently that a cadaver, you know, like a dead body, is super expensive for the hospital. So just imagine if we could have, if we could simulate real-world scenarios and have student practice from all over the world. You know, they could have could be in a virtual clinic. They could have access to real case, and they could also exchange with doctors that are from another continents. And I do believe that in many countries, access to training, access to this real-time, real-world situation is quite tricky. So I mean, I hope at least that the metaverse will be used for learning and training purposes, but also to have people interact around certain use cases. So I read that it would save a lot of frogs at university. Yes, and it will, I think, also prepare you also for what it is to see a human body, to see the inside, to see the. I mean, I will come back to a bit later, but training is definitely one of the big winner of the metaverse. And on top, it leaves also some space for experimentation, for discovery. So definitely something interesting here. And one of the things that Meta did quite well during the pandemic, I think it was last year, if I'm not mistaken, they collaborated with the World Health Organization to create some tutorials, to create some material, to educate healthcare professionals on how to deal with hygiene measures. So how to clean your hands, how to wear your equipment. You could visualize that through the lens of your smartphone, but also thanks to headsets or like 3D renders on your desktop. So you see there already some things happening, and I do believe here in the democratization of training thanks to the metaverse. And the last big opportunity, I'm a huge fan of this one, is this concept of digital twin. So let's imagine that we will create a copy of yourself based on real world data, and such as your medical record, such maybe thanks to wearables data and your habits. And you will have in the metaverse this copy of yourself where you could conduct some simulation. So of course, it will be extremely interesting for treatments, but also I believe for educational purposes, because I must admit, I love wine and I smoke from time to time. And I know that the GP came and tell me I have to slow down and so on. That's just words, right? But if I see the copy of my digital twin and some simulation, how the physical health of my twin is evolving among the time, how I see how out of shape I will become in 10 years if I keep on having this lifestyle, that will have a much deeper impact on me than the doctor, unfortunately, tell me you should stop smoking. So a digital twin is really cool to conduct experiments, but also will help to educate a bit better and to create awareness among patients. And they also already hear some concrete use case. So Dassault is collaborating with FDA, which is the Food and Drug Administration, and they are creating a virtual heart to assess a little bit on the macro level or also the individual level how the risk of cardiovascular sicknesses. So they do a lot of simulation on the heart level to understand how it will evolve based on different parameters. So that's already something that starts to happen. But again, that was only a few examples. In telemedicine, also for all the records for the patients to motivate a healthier lifestyle. There will be also some virtual clinics, also some new business model for healthcare, because you can come up with some new app, new training app, new devices. So I gave you 3 examples, but actually the opportunities are almost infinite. Another $1 million question is how to get metaverse ready. Well, technology can be super overwhelming. And I mean, just give TikTok to your grandparents. I'm not sure they will understand that double tap is actually to like a video, or to swipe left or right is to signify if you like or not certain person. So interaction takes some time to learn, and we tend to be a bit overwhelmed by the rate of innovation. So it's really important when we come up with new technology to come up with interaction and system that people are familiar to. There is quite an important and well-known design principle called the Jacob's Law, that users will transfer expectation that they build around one product to another one that looks similar. If you have had a TV in your life, you may remember on the remote this switch off button, which is red, like a circle. It's a universal symbol for on off. And when the first website started to appear, they use the same symbol to log out or to switch off the application, because people understood, well, these symbols mean to switch off. That's basically the same principle with the metaverse. We have to create interaction people are familiar with. We shouldn't reinvent the wheel from day one. Apple understood that quite well. In the early days, they come up with what we call skeuomorphism, is actually creating a look and feel which is quite similar to our real world. So that's for the camera, you will have a glancey lens. You will have a paper feel for the notebook, for the notes, with some leathery cover. So they really come with some real world haptic to familiarize people with the app. I don't know if they did on purpose, but that worked really pretty well. And nowadays we are really far from it, right? Nowadays we have some abstract flowers for the pictures. So there is a certain maturity from the users. But the beginning is supposed to keep that in mind. And yet we have to take full advantage of the tech. You can't simply put a keyboard and put it in front of the user. You have to take advantage of the space. Here you could have a full screen keyboard, or even better, you could actually use your arm to select pre-selected keywords. So of course you have to be something people are familiar with, but you could also take make the best of the metaverse. And the metaverse is actually such an opportunity to use storytelling. I'm not going to teach you anything here when I tell you that people get to have less and less attention span. I mean, back in the days on Facebook, I would binge watch 2-3 minutes video. Now on TikTok, we're talking about 5 to 10 seconds video. So I mean, our attention span will decrease over the years, and which is why it's extremely important to create experiences that are entertaining, that are actually digestible, because that way we can increase awareness, we can increase engagement, and we can transform content which is like a bit dry, such as educational content. It's something actually much more lovely. And the way to do that, I'll give you some few ideas in case one day you will design or you will conceive a product for your healthcare company. One thing that you should consider is that we have so many perspectives thanks to the metaverse. We are moving from a mouse moving on a screen to a first person, third person, or even a 2D bird's eye view. So that could actually, based on the context, be quite handy. You know, if you want to interact with a patient, you could have a first or third person perspective. If you want to navigate, you know, in your I don't know, through the records of your health insurance, you could actually have a like a physical room, and thanks to the bird view, move from one point to another. You know, I do believe Netflix is going to do that at some point. You know, Netflix will have like a cinema room for the comedy. The other one will be for the documentary. So we'll actually be physically moving to go from one information to another. The exciting thing is also the feedbacks and the inputs, because right now we really rely on our mouse, on our keyboards. But in the future, you will be able much more to use the touch, you know, the hand, the swipe gesture. You will turn your head to get some new content for your brain. So like the inputs will be greatly impacted, but also the feedbacks. So I mentioned a digital twin. I could directly see how my what will be the transformation, my potential transformation, if I keep on binge eating every time I go out. So I will see, you know, how my body will react, because I will have the direct feedback thanks to this avatar. And another feedbacks I found super interesting is the taking real use of digital audio, because digital audio is not something we really use right now. But let's say you conduct a surgery, you know, when you move, you know, your tool, as you can see, I have no know-how of of the jargon that you use, the scalpel. Then you could have like an audio feedback to that assess a bit the distance, or even again coming back to this safe room treating PTSD and so on. You could have certain music, certain sound based on where the user is in the metaverse. So that, I believe, is going to be such an opportunity as well to create different products. I have 5 to 10 minutes left, and before I take question, I would like to to tell you a bit about the risk and pitfalls, especially for the healthcare industry. One of the big risks is harassment and shaming. I mean, that was a big surprise of the social media network, right? How people, even anonymously, can be so much hateful. You know, like there was so many cyberbullying, so many, especially among the younger generation, so many cases of kids that really become desperate because of these like mass effects that you can have online. And since the metaverse is going to be so much more immersive, that will have even more drastic and greater negative consequences on young minds. So that's something that has to be really taken into account. And anyone who is starting a project in the metaverse have to really keep that in mind. I mean, we have to implement some mechanism to actually prevent this kind of behaviors. And that's our role of people that want to start in this industry, to keep that in mind. Another important thing is digital addiction. We are already addicted to technology, but I read that virtual reality gaming is 44% more addictive than traditional gaming. Traditional gaming being behind a laptop or a console. So that's going to have such an impact on any kind of metaverse experiences. Browsing video online, spending too much time in entertaining sphere, spending too much time at work. I mean, it does happen. People already spend too much time at the office. Now just imagine you can reach the office days and nights. So yeah, here it's really something we have to be the gatekeeper if we create product in this metaverse, and really keep that in mind. And what I believe is even more scary, I spoke about monopoly, you know, at the beginning of the keynote, saying that hopefully it won't be one company that controls the metaverse, and there would be different metaverses. The fact is, the social web is dominated by Meta. That's a fact. And I went at the beginning of the year at the conference called South by Southwest, where Mark Zuckerberg was displaying his big plan for the metaverse, and not one single time did he mention the ethical failure of Facebook, and nor did he address it for the metaverse. So it's like we are redoing the same mistake for the metaverse. So data manipulation, fake news, and all, I mean, sorry, pardon my French, but all the shit show that happened with the social network, I'm afraid is going to happen again in a metaverse. So it won't be the platform would be regulating that. That will be the company creating content for the metaverse that will have to be the gatekeeper in terms of ethical behaviors, in terms of sharing data and so on. So we can't put it on someone else. And last risk, as a designer, it's quite close to my heart, is a topic of accessibility. It's already really challenging to create websites that are truly accessible for people with visual impairments. We have to deal with contrast, we have to deal with a screen reader, we have to deal with a different font size. So it's a lot of work. So now we are adding enough dimension to it. So I mean, I have to take that in account, but also people that decided to launch a project in the metaverse need to make sure that can everyone use this technology? I mean, physically, because if you use a headset, it requires certain ability, but also in terms of financial, because I don't want half of the world to be excluded from the metaverse just because they don't have access to the technology, or they can't render all the assets in real time. So we have to come up with some alternative while creating new product in the metaverse. So yeah, I'm a bit over time, so I will do a quick wrap up. So one of my first advice is to keep in mind that it's important to have a slow learning curve when you want to bring people to the metaverse. At the beginning, start to use things people are familiar with, refer to the Jacob's law. Think 3D, think special experiences. So when you brainstorm for a concept, don't put everything on paper, but just try to be in a physical room and discuss, the potential of the metaverse. And last but not least, we should not expect any platform to take responsibility in terms of ethical risk and accessibility. We have to own the mistakes that happen with the 2.0, Web 2.0, and every time we are going to conceive a project, it will be our responsibility, anyone partaking to the project, to actually raise the question. And what about people with visual impairment? What about people that don't have access to internet? We have to address that. Unless I can tell you for sure that nobody will care. Thank you so much for your time. I spoke a bit more than expected. I hope you understood everything despite my French accent. And if you have any question, please let me know.
Thank you so much for that, Guillaume. That was fantastic. I really enjoyed that. I think you hit on a couple of points which is quite pertinent. If we start making Meta the gatekeeper to the metaverse, I think we're allowing ourselves to enter another shit show which we've just experienced during pandemic and post sort of elections. So
yeah,
absolutely correct though. But is there anybody else, in your opinion, that is playing in the space that we should be sort of looking out for, which is doing ethically right?
Yeah, I mean, the scary part is that right now we have the early adopters moving in this area. So people that really freaks of technology, that want to experiment stuff, and this fever actually can be dangerous, because it's all about trying new things and just like blindly trying to understand the limits of progress. And this is not made according to any business decision or even like universal decision. It's just like a pure curiosity. So the people involved around me in the metaverse are just like blindly experimenting. So they are like dealing with displaying NFT in virtual museum. They are like all about trying. So I mean, I am going to be honest, I don't know many people that actually start to raise this concern. I mean, I also believe it's because it's still early stage. So I wouldn't say it's not an excuse, but by always wanting to experiment and just trying to understand the limit of the technology, you don't look at the big picture, you don't look at the business model, you don't look at the universal access, You don't look at the utility of what you do. You just want to experiment. So right now, this experiment is not really make in the sake of a universal experience. It's mostly to answer certain curiosity. So as of today, I'm going to be honest. I don't know many people that actually consider ethical and accessible design in the meta. I know there are, I mean, in my inner circle, there are some articles out there. There are some conferences that speak about that. I'm just talking from a personal level around me.
Okay, thank you for that. Just one last thing.
Mm-hmm.
As a UX practitioner, should we diversify skills to metaverse as well?
Well, I'm going to speak about my own experience. I used to deal my whole life with 2D software. I mean, I design from customer journeys to UI design. It's all about layers on top of each other, but visualized on the screen. And when I started to deal with the metaverse and augmented reality experiences, I realized I have to unlearn a certain reflex. You know, like I tend to put everything in a square, you know, to put all the content in front of me. And then I realized, well, no, you really have to think like an architect almost. And I do think that in the game industry, for the reason that I mentioned before, they're a bit more advanced. So what I started to do is actually follow some people with whom I worked a few years ago. It could be a game artist, it could be like a environments artist, to understand a bit how they create and shape through the environment, and how they actually combine, you know, like UX interfaces with through the environment. So there's something to learn. Yeah, you have to go out a bit of your industry to look at what the game industry does. I do think that having another look at video games can also be helpful, because, you know, I don't play much, but when it happened, I start to look at the environment and think, okay, they put a message on this so they put like on an item an explanation just next to it instead of putting in a menu, because this explanation is really context based. Only when the user is going near to this object, then it matters to read the text relating to this object. So it's much more context-based information, and that's something I actually realized while playing a game. So yeah, I mean, maybe an advice would be to see what's happening in video game, because I do think it will influence a little bit our work. So if there are no any questions, I will leave you. Perfect. And I will wish you a lovely day. I will. You will upload the presentation. Should I send you the link?
Absolutely. If you just send it to me, I'll upload it onto our drive and we'll make it access to everyone. So thank you so much.
Perfect. Have a nice day.